recording. Hello, and welcome back to Her Becoming. Today we are diving into one of my favorite topics as of late, which is self-abandonment. And we are going to specifically discuss how you can shift from patterns of self-abandonment and people-pleasing into practices of deep self-devotion, embodiment, and coming home to your authentic truth. This is a topic that I've personally been studying deeply over the last few months as I have been going through an immense identity shift. And I really want to dedicate this episode to anyone that wants to increase their confidence, have more meaningful and secure relationships, both with yourself and with other people, and discover your true essence, discover who you are meant to be. This is a crucial topic to understand if you fall into any of these categories. So let's just dive in. We're going to start by defining self-abandonment. I have talked about this quite a bit in the last 2 episodes, but if you are just joining us, self-abandonment occurs when you put your needs aside to please people around you or in order to keep the peace in everyone else's life. It happens when we throw out yeses to make sure that other people are content and happy before we check in with ourselves and our own needs, wants, and desires. And it also happens when we suppress our own emotions in order to avoid inconveniencing other people. I know that one I'm extremely guilty of. And it also happens when we suppress our own authentic emotions because we fear that they may inconvenience the people in our lives. This is something that I was doing for the last few years of my relationship, and I didn't have the words to define it nor the awareness to recognize it. But now that I do, hindsight's 2020, right? I'm able to see all of these times, all of these situations where self-abandonment was what was keeping me stuck and keeping me complacent in the relationship that did not serve me. And this goes back to childhood, as everything does in our adult life. Personally, I grew up as the shy kid. I was pretty quiet. I kept to myself. 1, because I didn't want to get in trouble. And 2, because I didn't want to inconvenience other people, especially adults, with my big emotions or my big feelings or even my opinions and desires. I was a great kid, but now I can see so clearly as an adult that my shyness as a kid made it challenging for me to learn how to use my voice, learn how to advocate for my own needs as an adult. And it comes from this feeling of, who am I to speak on this? Who am I to have an opinion on this? So in my relationship, which I got into at 20 years old, which is so young, you think you're so grown, but 20, you're just a baby. I hadn't learned yet how to fully self-advocate for myself. I wasn't connected to my intuition. I probably couldn't even define intuition at 20. And I wasn't feeling confident yet in my own decision making. So you pair that with a relationship, which over the last few years really tested my willingness to vocalize what I needed, which were really simple things: respect, consideration, faithfulness, all of which were not honored in the end. And I continued to self-abandon by forgiving and by staying because I thought that by doing that, I could change the outcome of the actions. But all that did was reset the cycle and prepare me to continue to self-abandon and continue to be hurt by those actions. For women, we see self-abandonment happen in a variety of ways. It looks like women saying we're easygoing or wanting to be easygoing so that we don't get in the way or inconvenience people. It looks like calling ourselves low maintenance. I'm just chill, I don't require much, because again, we're putting our own needs on the back burner. It looks like minimizing your needs as a badge of honor, being proud of that. For me, growing up especially, it looked like being labeled as the mature one. Adults would always tell me, "You're so mature for your age. Wow, you're so well-behaved and so mature." And all that was I was afraid to speak out and afraid to show my emotions because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to disrupt the peace. And that was seen as being mature. But what it really was me learning to self-abandon through silencing my own thoughts and emotions. It also looks like being okay with nonchalant behavior. Let me tell y'all, I will never date another nonchalant man. Do not be nonchalant with me. I am no longer the low maintenance girly that wants a nonchalant man. No, that's not gonna fly. I am vocalizing my needs, my wants, and my desires. And if you do not meet those, it's not gonna work. And you have to go through, at least in my case, you have to go through the self abandonment and the needs not being met to understand and recognize how important it is and also how worthy we are to be with someone that can actually meet those needs. Self abandonment shows up in a lot of different ways. It can show up somatically, so in your body, through overthinking, feeling disconnected, or even anxious attachment style, because what self abandonment does is it disconnects you from your intuition. When you're disconnected from your intuition, you're put into these cycles of overthinking and therefore feeling disconnected from your body. I've done a lot of research on attachment styles, and what we often see is people who self abandon typically falling into the anxious attachment style. I know that's what I fall into. When I'm not in secure attachment, I am in anxious attachment. And this is because when you self abandon, you are consistently monitoring other people's emotions and needs before your own in order to keep that connection in place. You think if I stay agreeable, helpful, and needed, then I won't be left. If I can just keep the control, again, going back to control, if I can control everything around me, then there will be peace. Then I will not be abandoned and I can stay in this relationship. People who self abandon and are anxiously attached are constantly scanning around for what other people need, but silencing their own desires in the process. And it's very possible that I do have an anxious attachment style, but I often now wonder how much of that was driven by just self abandoning behaviors. If I were to remove the self abandonment, I'd probably exist in the secure attachment style a lot more frequently than I was in my past relationship. If you can relate to these examples, you're someone that has self abandoned, you people please, you don't want to inconvenience others, you're constantly putting your needs on the back burner, it doesn't mean you're broken. We're not broken. It just means that we learned how to survive. We learned how to exist in the world through those behaviors. And now, as adults who are curious and self aware and spiritually aligned, we get to learn how to come home to ourselves. And one of the ways that we can come home to ourselves is through practicing self devotion. Self devotion is an act of nurturing your needs, honoring your truth, and reconnecting with your body. Self devotion, I want to separate it from self care. Think of self care as doing the things and self devotion as the being. So, doing versus being. Today, we're focused on talking about the being of self devotion. Self devotion is truly the opposite of self abandonment because when we're self abandoning, we're putting everyone else's needs above our own. And when we are committed to a deep self devotion, we are putting our needs front and center and honoring them as true, worthy, and important. So, how do we get into the habit of practicing self devotion? The first one is learning to check in with yourself and practicing self inquiry. You hear me talk about self inquiry a lot, and that's because I truly think it's the most powerful way to connect to yourself. When I say self inquiry, I mean asking yourself questions, checking in with yourself through journaling, asking yourself, how am I doing today? How does my body feel today? Where do I feel triggered? Where do I feel joy? And just getting more familiar with your own actions and behaviors. Along those same lines is recognizing if and when you self-abandon and noticing the patterns. If you find yourself self-abandoning in specific relationships, it's time to get honest with yourself about who you're spending your time with and what you're spending your time doing. Looking at who you're around when you self-abandon. Is it happening in specific relationships? Is it happening in specific settings? Is it happening at work? Is it happening with your boss? Is it happening with your close friends? And reassessing the circles, we know that who you spend time with is such an important factor in the type of person you become. So just making note and recognizing the patterns of self-abandonment is going to help you understand where you need to practice self-devotion. Part of practicing self-devotion is reclaiming your voice and reclaiming your power through learning how to vocalize your needs. Especially if you are someone that also grew up shy and quiet, if you're the last one to raise your hand in class, the last one to speak up when you feel that nudge in your gut that something isn't right, self-devotion means honoring you first. It means having the confidence and practicing getting comfortable at using your voice to speak up for what you need, what you believe in, and what you desire. Because people can't read our minds. We have to learn to advocate for ourselves, opening up that throat chakra, takes a lot of work, a lot of shadow work, and a lot of unraveling. But it is incredibly important in increasing your confidence and stepping into this next version of who you're becoming. Movement to reconnect with your body is also a huge act of self-devotion. When we're existing in the space of self-abandonment, disconnected from our intuition, we're usually also disconnected from our bodies. So, something as simple as going for a walk and checking in head to toe scan of how the body is feeling, practicing yoga, stretching, lengthening, increasing your circulation in your body, all of these activities that allow you to get in touch with how you're feeling and going back into self inquiry. Where do I feel tense today? Where do I feel open today? Where do I need to release today? These are all questions that you can ask yourself to increase your connection with your body and therefore increase your self-devotion. The last thing, and we just touched on this a bit, is increasing your self-trust through your intuition. We are going to do a deep dive into this on the next episode because I could truly talk intuition all day long, but a huge part of coming home to yourself is learning to listen to yourself. If you take one thing away from this episode, let it be putting your own needs above the need to keep everyone else comfortable. This does not happen overnight. The practice of self-devotion is not a perfect system. It is simply learning how to be present in your own body and in your own life. I am a student of this right now. I have been committing myself to my own practices of self-devotion for the last 3 months, and I can tell you I've never felt more connected to who I am and who I'm becoming. So I would love for you to join me. I'm going to leave you with this reflection. You can journal on it, you can discuss with a friend, or you can simply think about this as we come to a close. But here's the prompt. When was the last time I self-abandoned? And what might have shifted if I had chosen self-devotion instead? I will also put that question in the show notes, as well as ways that we can stay connected. I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me. Let's have the conversations. Let's talk about self-devotion and ways you can start coming home to yourself. I will see you in the next episode. We've got a whole lot to talk about in regards to intuition and self-trust. And until then, be well.